evening, everyone. This meeting of the Bedford Public School Committee is called to order at 8:15 p.m. It is Tuesday, January 13th. We'll start with a roll call vote. Angel.
Here.
Sarah.
Here.
Sheila.
Here.
Brad.
Here.
I'm here. All five of us are here, and we have Kim Howell, our military family rep, also joining us virtually. Before we start on our formal agenda, the Bedford School Committee would like to provide the community with an update. In accordance with Title IX procedures, on January 8th, 2026, the school committee and all parties received the decisions of the independent decision maker, Attorney Jeffrey Sankey, regarding complaints against Superintendent Schwang. For those of you online, we're just closing the door. I'll actually start over, so thank you, so everyone can hear what I'm saying. The Bedford School Committee would like to provide the community with an update. In accordance with Title IX procedures, on January 8th, 2026, the school committee and all parties received the decisions of the independent decision maker, Attorney Jeffrey Sankey, regarding complaints against Superintendent Schwang. The committee has since carefully reviewed and considered those decisions. We wish to inform the community that Attorney Sankey concluded that the allegations against Superintendent Schwang were not substantiated by the preponderance of the evidence, and that Superintendent Schwang was not found responsible for any violation of Title IX. In light of this determination, the school committee intends to place an executive session on an upcoming meeting agenda for the purpose of contract negotiations with the superintendent. Upon reaching an agreement with the superintendent, the school committee will take up a public vote on the contract at a future meeting. The school committee is bound by privacy and confidentiality requirements that protect all parties involved, which necessarily limits the level of detail that can be shared publicly. The school committee wishes to thank the community for its patience, understanding, and civility during this process. As a committee, we look ahead to continued collaboration in service to the students and families of Bedford. Moving on to our formal agenda, we'll open the public comment period. If there's anyone in the room who wishes to give public comment, please raise your hand. If there is anyone online attending via webinar who wishes to give public comment, if you could please raise your virtual hand.
One technical moment. I think for some reason I wasn't recording the webinar, but are you broadcasting? Okay, I'm going to turn the recording on because it was like recording the chatter before. Okay.
You're good? Okay.
Yes, we have someone in the...
We're going to start with the room. Is there anyone in the room tonight wishing to give public comment? Yes, if you could please comment.
To time.
And my timer will... No.
Do I need to move one of these microphones over there?
No, they
Oh
are.
yeah, usually there is one. Thanks, Amy.
Go ahead.
My name is Nathan Cooprider. I live at 608 Springs Road. My oldest girls attended Bedford schools from kindergarten through graduation and now attend college. My third daughter attends 8th grade at JGMS. My son goes to 5th grade at Lane School. My wife works as a teaching assistant at the high school. We moved to Bedford in 2008 in part because of the schools and have stayed since then for the same reason. I normally leave budget choices for the school district off my radar, like most people, I think. But that requires trust. Trust that those who make those choices will do so to the benefit of the school district, and trust that they will communicate the reasoning behind those choices honestly. Unfortunately, many actions taken by the school district administration have eroded my faith in the communication coming out around the budget. I will list a few examples. I've repeatedly heard that out-of-town special education placement has been a large driver of district deficit for the past 2 years. A proposal was put forward last month to bring those students back in district, but the cost of significant disruption to this population nets only $15,000 in projected savings without addressing the residual effects such a move would create. Last June, before this body, I heard the lack of unfilled personnel openings touted as an indication of district strength, instead of the more candid explanation that it came from not reopening vacancies left by employee attrition This represented a lost capacity to provide services inside the district. A year ago, we were told we were not hiring an assistant superintendent as a step to save expenses, but now Bedford Public Schools has 2. I do not understand the dramatic escalation in need for assistance during this time of fiscal austerity. Those are just a few instances that have eroded trust in the communication about the school district budget. I readily admit that I have limited visibility into the complex problems involved and am operating with incomplete information. But the recent Bedford Citizen article about the budget process indicates I am not alone. Preying on that lack of information or attempting to gaslight perceptions will only further degrade necessary trust. The Bedford School District has some very difficult fiscal challenges ahead, and the only way to successfully navigate them is through transparency and collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room tonight wishing to provide public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll turn to our webinar. We have a hand raised. Zena, Cliff will recognize you. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. If you could just state your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, Zena Delmer, 6 Hayden Lane. Just wanted to provide a couple of thoughts regarding the school activity fee, and specifically trying to potentially minimize the burden on families that have significantly tighter budgets. And so some ideas that I wanted to potentially throw out for consideration is whether if the school activity fee gets implemented, if the school district could reach out to families who may automatically qualify for a waiver at the start of the school year and let them know that perhaps they wouldn't have to fill out any other administrative forms because they automatically qualify, perhaps due to their household income that is known through other maybe federal forms that those families fill out. Just again, to try and ease the administrative burden for some of those families, so it's not something they have to think about when thinking about their kids attending various activities or participating. And then for families who may not potentially automatically qualify for a waiver, I just want to make sure that we're thinking about how to ease the administrative burden for those who have tighter budgets and how they can potentially explore potentially getting a waiver if necessary. And then lastly, for students who drive to the high school because they have to get to after school jobs, if there is an opportunity to potentially consider them being exempt from the parking fees, since that seems to kind of contradict their desire to earn money for whatever reason they need to earn money on. So those were just some ideas I wanted to throw out. Thank you for your consideration.
Great. Thank you, Zena. We'll leave it open for another few moments here. If anyone else, either online or in the room, wishes to provide public comment, now is the right time. Anyone?
I don't see anyone.
Okay. Seeing none, we are going to close the public comment period, and we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is our consent agenda and vote. Superintendent Schwang.
Just standard minutes from your last meeting and a overnight field trip request for a Model UN, which is something that happens every year.
Okay. We'll go around if anyone has any questions or comments or wants to pull anything off the consent agenda for a discussion, starting with you, Kim.
No questions. Thank you.
Angel?
I just have a question. Can I vote if I wasn't here? Do I not
Yes.
vote on the minutes? So does
Yes.
it need to pull out because I can't vote on
You
the
can.
house?
Yes, you can vote.
You can still
I
vote.
can. Oh, yes.
You can also abstain if you want.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
That was my only question. Thank you.
Sarah?
No questions.
Sheila?
No questions.
Brad?
Yes. No question. Sorry.
Yes, no questions.
I too have no questions. All right, then we will move to a vote. May I hear a motion to approve? Let me get to that language. That threw me, Brad.
Sorry.
All right. May I hear a motion that the school committee approve the consent agenda as presented, including the minutes from December 16th, 2025, and the overnight field trip request, Boston Model UN Conference, February 6th through 8th, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Sarah Scoville has moved, Angel Petta has seconded. Roll call vote. Angel?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sheila?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well, 5-0, the motion passes. All right, moving on to our next agenda item. It is the draft SY27 district calendar, second read and vote. Superintendent Schwang.
Yes, this calendar has not changed except for one substantive update from your first read. Actually, there's an update per, I think Member Scoville wanted to know what the first day of athletics was. It is August 24th, and it is the same for all sports this year. So that has been added. And then after consulting with stakeholders and staff, we're proposing that the day before winter break on December 23rd, Wednesday, is a true early dismissal half day to avoid confusion about the Wednesday schedule and just to preempt that confusion, because teachers would stay presumably an extra hour after school on Wednesday, and given the proximity to travel for a lot of people, we just wanted to put that in place from the get-go. So that would be added to the traditional day before Thanksgiving and traditional last day of school. So that is the only change.
Okay, thank you. We'll go around, starting with you, Kim.
Yep, I don't have any questions, thank you.
Okay, Angel?
No questions, just one, I don't know if this matters now. The original one of these had the holidays as a secondary page. This one's just the calendar,
Yeah, I don't
so I just
know
want
where
to
it went.
I just want to make sure that it ends up
Yes,
get
that will still
together.
be part of it.
Yeah, on the
That was
website
always
or whatever.
supplementary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's all I got.
It's actually, I think, updated in your electronic, the printed one. This is, if you have a printed one, there's a couple
No.
things that we fixed.
Okay.
I don't have any questions.
Sheila?
No, I do like the official early dismissal day on the day before winter break. I think with the snow day this year, and that I heard feedback personally from a lot of teachers at BHS as well as students. So I like that we're going to try and formalize that.
Okay, Brad?
No questions.
Okay. I also have no questions, so we will take a vote. I don't see a motion.
Oh,
Proposed motion.
yes, I should have had a motion.
It's okay.
Sorry.
May I hear a motion to approve the draft school year 27 district, the draft school year 27 district calendar as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Brad has moved, Sheila has seconded. Roll call vote, starting with Angel.
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sheila?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
I'm a yes, 5-0, the motion passes. Okay. Moving along to our next agenda item, that is our continuation of our fiscal year 27 budget discussion. Superintendent Schwang and Julie Curran, Director of Finance.
Yes, so we are in the home stretch of the budget process. Tonight, I will be asking for an informal straw poll so that we can prepare for the public hearing that is scheduled to begin the next meeting on the 27th, and when you are also expected to vote to approve a school budget for fiscal 27. I will, we have further refined the budget based on the discussions that we had in December, along with additional feedback and new information. As I have said throughout this process, due to our very early budget year, we don't have all the information that we can take into account. New information becomes available, and we have had new information around voluntary staff departures that we tried to take advantage of in the spirit of our tiering approach. We expect that additional opportunities may arise between now and town meeting in March. So we will continue to obviously look at it, but what we're presenting tonight represents our best estimate of what we think we can achieve while maintaining the excellent opportunities that the community values and not impacting student programming in terms of what we offer. So what I've done is updated the presentation that's already posted online, and you'll see the word updated in blue and then text in blue that represents some shifts from when we originally presented the budget on December 9th. So the budget as revised since the last meeting on December 16th is a $53.7 million request, which represents a 3.1% increase, which is down a bit from 3.35% budget request that we originally presented. I'll go into the detail because it actually is a little different than the discussion we had on December 16th, where we thought we could garner some additional revenue through the fees. So there's been some shifts, but we are ultimately able to get down to roughly the same where we thought we would be on December 16th. I do want to remind you all and the community that we are requesting to take advantage of the availability of one-time funds in town to ensure that our special ed stabilization fund is fully funded. So we've done that consistently since we established it 2 years ago. We invested in it last year, and we're asking for sort of the final installment to get it to the $1 million maximum allowed. A reminder that the swing that we experienced in fiscal '24 was more than $2 million in terms of unanticipated costs. So the stabilization fund is important, but isn't necessarily large enough to cover some of the sizes of swings that are possible. You will hear after the budget presentation on the 27th, the Q2 update on fiscal '26, where we will bring you up to speed in terms of where we currently are at across all cost centers, but also particularly around the ups and downs that we've experienced in some of the non-discretionary expenses that we are obligated to pay. And as a reminder, I believe this week is when our budgets are being presented to Select Board from CapEx. Is it this Thursday?
29th?
Oh, I felt like there was something this week.
Oh,
Very
finance.
soon. That's, of course, separate through the capital process. So just
Okay.
a reminder that-
I'm sorry, it is this Thursday.
It is? Okay. So we have updated Tier 1, Tier 2, and the revenue tier. As you can see in this slide, we have been able to take advantage of some additional voluntary departures. So this is an increase from the FTE, I believe it was 6.9 last time, so we're up to 7.5 with a little bit of additional pickup in terms of savings. Actually, let me just go into detail here. So we believe that we can capture 8.5 FTE savings through reallocations or taking advantage of vacancies not backfilled, which is up a bit from this, what was, I should have had it before and after, sorry about that, 7 something last time. So the cost savings have increased, and I do want to remind you all again that the town is picking up on the town side savings as well because of the reduction in benefits. So we're not counting that obviously as part of our budget proposal, but because we're looking at the town's finances as a whole, it's important to acknowledge that these cost reduction measures on the school side actually save on the town side as well. We have continued to work with our bus company around bus consolidation. They have made a request to consider not rerouting 2 years or it would be 3 years in a row. As you recall, last year we were able to consolidate a bus which required some rerouting. We, based on enrollment, believe we can consolidate another bus for fiscal '27, and then we anticipate we would be doing some extensive rerouting for fiscal '28 once we land on a path forward with respect to healthy school hours. No matter which option we choose, we'll require rerouting. Given rerouting takes a significant amount of effort, they've asked to consider delay of rerouting and not trying to capture that one bus this year. In exchange, they've offered some cost concessions, and Julie is in negotiations right now in terms of considering adjusting the contractual increases that are built into the contract and delaying the increases till fiscal '28. We also are committed to purchasing routing software to be sure that we have the tools available to us to maximize the rerouting process once it begins. So the cost savings on this is slightly down. I believe it was $105,000 before. The differential is essentially the cost of rerouting software, but combined with the additional reductions we were able to achieve in the staffing, we are still ahead in Tier 1 in total compared to where we were before. Tier 2, the net looks very similar to before, although there was some minor movement between Tier 2 Tier 1 that was replaced by some other, again, reductions that we were able to open up once we took into account the additional vacancies. So the number, the actual financial budget change has shifted a bit because the FTE is a little slightly different FTE than we had previously included. The other two components of Tier 2 have remained the same. And then with respect to the revenue tier, we did do some significant additional work with the team on both the first two activity fees. I'm going to go in reverse order. The parking fees, we took a closer look at the actual number of permits that are issued right now and adjusted the number appropriately, assuming that we would not get the same number as we currently have, because once you have to pay for it, we assume that some students and families might choose to find other ways. So we adjusted downward a bit the net revenue estimate for parking. In terms of student activity fees, this has gone through a number of permutations, but we have decided to recommend a secondary only fee, though there are activities at the elementary level that do cost additional revenue, cost additional funds to implement through stipends for staff who do them. The number isn't sufficiently large to warrant the collection process. So we have opted to limit student activity fees to only secondary, and we are proposing 2 all-access fees, a basic access fee and then an all-access fee. The basic fee being the less resource-intensive clubs that we will identify by list, proposed at $150, which is a slight increase from last discussion, again, to account for the fact that we're trying to keep the elementary sort of off the board. And then we are keeping with that $400 fee, which I think we discussed at the last meeting, for unlimited access to everything, but particularly the higher intensity activities. We have worked with the program directors of athletics and performing arts to hone in on the participation numbers, and we are fairly confident that this number is actually quite conservative. So we could generate more revenue than this number, which would obviously help us, could push the percentage increase of the budget downward. But because this is the first time we've done it, we would very much rather err on the side of collecting more revenue than projected than less. But we are fairly confident, given data that we received today, confirmation that this is a conservative revenue figure, which you may note is slightly down from the prior one, which is I think around 309. Something that came to light in discussions we even just had this morning is that even up through the middle school, a lot of families are still paying fees for recreation activities that are conducted on school grounds. I think there was a public comment to that effect as well at the last meeting. So we do have to be clear which clubs are school clubs versus rec clubs, but the rec clubs already charge a fee. So it would in fact perhaps bring some parallelness to the activities available after school. So all told, oh dang it, I think that, is that 7.5 number correct? Yes. Okay. We're still looking at, I think it was 16.9 before. We're still looking at, close to 18 staff reductions overall. split between the two tiers, and the revenue tier, which brings us to that lower 3.1% figure when we sum it all together. We are beginning the work. These numbers represent very specific and carefully thought through reductions that will not impact student programming and to minimize staff impact as much as we can, but given declining enrollment and given our budgetary constraints, there is no way to hold staff neutral in terms of impact. But I do want to emphasize that there will be no programmatic, everything that's available to students now will still be available to students next year, with the only constraints that I previously discussed, that perhaps the percentage of kids who get their very first choice elective might be slightly less than it has been. But in terms of the types of activities, the types of classes, they're all still intact. We anticipate pushing out some additional information on the budget, potentially an informational video or a series of videos over the next 2 weeks ahead of the public hearing. We will be posting the final revised budget that we were presenting to on the committee but no later than Friday, January 20, I should have put that up there, 26, 25, 24, 23rd, for the community to review ahead of your vote on the 27th, and also ahead of the public hearing scheduled for the 27th. And then we present to the Finance Committee shortly thereafter that same week. Typically, the Finance Committee doesn't vote to recommend during the initial presentation, so we will likely return to the Finance Committee for another presentation before they take a vote on whether or not they recommend the school committee approved budget. And then, as you all well know, we head to town meeting in March, for March 23rd. So, there you have the update. Questions? Comments?
All right, we will start with you, Kim. Do you have any questions or thoughts?
Just holding strong on my position that I'm glad to see some really thoughtful work going into the activity fees, but I still think fees in general are going to be kind of discouraging for our military families when it comes to these activities that are such critical bridges for us to the Bedford community. So I know that there are a lot of mechanisms to avoid those fees, and they're lower than what had been proposed before, but I would still like to make it known that I think fees in general will be diversionary, but again, I know there has to be a balance, so just making sure we represent our families appropriately.
Great, thanks, Kim. Angel?
Can I make the assumption that sorry, that's not the right notes page, that the difference, that the percentage difference that we see here is directly correlated to the difference between the first 53.8 something that we saw and like whatever the number is today? Okay. I guess I'll just say publicly that I still feel pretty strongly and committed to the fact that if this came in at 3.25 or 3.3, like that I would support that. I'm going to say it out loud just to be fair. I appreciate the efforts to continue to move it down. It's something that I publicly committed to when you first presented it, and something that I will say out loud again that I would support if that is where it came in. So do with that what you will as you continue development. I don't, my colleagues will have their own opinions, but I'm just gonna kind of put that out there. I have a question about because I'm not sure I understood this part. So do we manage the routes and then give them to the bus company? Or,
So their Bedford Charter is our contract.
yeah,
And they do the routing.
Okay.
And they do it manually. They've done the routing manually for many, many years. And with a change like this, they are very open to, in fact, routing software, which is a great tool, which many districts use. in parallel with a bus company or in partnership, or provided to, or sometimes it's built into a contract, but since we're in the middle of our contract, it's something we're negotiating. And I very much appreciate the partnership with Bedford Charter because they know that we need to bring down costs, and they know that we need to increase efficiency, and we have a number of changes.
I'm sorry, the owl is like lazy. It's not
Okay.
like it's just staring at you while I don't know why. Sorry.
So we've received a very thoughtful communication from them. We followed up with the first of what will be a few meetings and some time to find those savings, but perhaps in a smarter way that really allows not a duplication of effort regarding the routing, and also bringing in a routing software, which I would envision would be shared. The data would be shared between the district and the bus company, but that's their bread and butter wheelhouse. That answer your question?
It does.
Yes.
It confuses me in that it's 2026 and they're still doing this manually. Like that.
Yes.
That dumbfounds me in ways that I can't even get into. But I also think so. And then we're paying for software then to optimize routes that they're supposed to be setting up for us. And then
Well, it's
is it just
mutually
but then I'm
advocacy.
assuming it's just ours, right? Like they won't get to use it for anything else. It's just for our district. So that's what we're looking to invest in. So we're investing in software to optimize routes, to give data to them. Do they then have to accept those routes as the software spits it out? Or do they just take it as a recommendation and still will then be doing work that they think is a better optimization than what the
No,
software does?
They
Like,
are seeking the route, this routing software. They wish to move in that direction. And having worked with bus companies for a number of years, the local knowledge is a wonderful thing. It's very strong. Sometimes routing software actually doesn't do as good a job in a community like Bedford. But I'm very pleased that they have requested it and they want it. They want, and who exactly owns it, I think is critical for both, is it to be determined. I think it is very critical for both the district and the bus company to have access to the tool so that we can feel comfortable that the routes are efficient, and but it will be their primary responsibility to complete routing.
Okay.
That's their
Yeah.
job.
I guess at the bottom line, I would want to make sure that we're not the ones paying for this, but then they're using it for any other relationships they have
Right.
based on whatever costs that we're paying for it, should be commensurate with where we are as a customer, right? Like there should be some sort of ratio or percentage, right? Versus we pay for it, but now they have other contracts they're using it for. It doesn't make sense to me. So I just want to make sure that, because I've seen situations like that in the past where someone wants it and they invest in it, and then that company in turns like, that's great, you're paying for it, but I'm going to use this to optimize my contracts other places, and that's
Yeah, and
not
we
a
have it.
position that I think we want to be in, right? So we want to make sure that that's not the
Clearly
case.
has private school customers and
Right.
other public customers, and we are a big customer.
Right. And so I just imagine that either that could be a shared cost across other district schools, whatever, if the idea is that they're going to use this to optimize their routing, more generally speaking. So, okay.
Thank you. Great feedback.
That was that. I guess my other question is more, again, it's a broader, kind of like big, hairy goal kind of thing, which is, what is it that can be, if somehow, I just want to make sure that we're not, to one of even our commenters' point earlier, that I know that you're giving good care and thought to the cuts that are being made. I just want to stress that I don't want to see things cut just to get to a number, and ensure that, and continue to ensure that what is being cut is not, or I want the public to understand that whatever is being cut is purposeful and is not changing services, right? I think that that's a fine line between like when it starts to get disruptive, right? And so
Yes.
I know that that's the path that we continue to be taking, but I just want to stay on that path and not get worried, right? Oh, well, we can still push a little further if we do this thing. Like, I'm happy with where we are.
Yeah, I can again confirm that, for example, what families, students might notice that instead of an average class size of 19, it might be an average class size of 21 in the middle school, say, right? That's the type of shift. It won't be, we aren't offering X course or X activity any longer. And the reality is that maybe the staff member who used to deliver certain services, that may have to be adapted because we now don't have enough kids to fill what that staff member used to do. So we may have to redeploy, reallocate. So I don't want to minimize the fact that that is disruptive for staff, but the commitment, the primary commitment is to ensure that we maintain the offerings for students, even though we're declining in student enrollment. So we have to make some adjustments. But the reductions that we were able to, the additional reductions were, again, opportunities that were created by additional known voluntary departures where we could sort of take advantage of it. But it is a very delicate and carefully thought through in terms of what positions, and we've been able to identify landing places, if you will, through this process, and we are continuing to work on that between now and when we have to make the decisions ahead of, right after town meeting.
Sweet. I had a thought and I lost it. I'll try to find that. One of the commenters had mentioned about student parking and the ones who park, right, because they're trying to get to jobs, which is something I hadn't considered prior to that, right? Maybe that student could and would take the bus or walk otherwise. So I do think that is an interesting potential exemption to consider. And again, have it as a student thing, like let them advocate for themselves, right? As to the why. I think that is a interesting kind of take that I wouldn't have thought of before. So that is certainly worth considering. Oh, I remember what it was now. Some of the stuff is the word I'm not looking for, I'm going to use it, that you want to put together in terms of the justification of budget and whatnot to be made public. I don't know if we've considered some of the, especially with class sizes, comparable districts and letting people see, right, like where our numbers are. Like, just again, let the public see that it's not so far-fetched for our classes to be at 21 when you see kind of other towns that we've been compared to and what they're at as well, right? Like that there's, and they function and they work, and that's just something that I think people don't necessarily know because they're used to what it's here, right? I remember when I finally started getting kids in school here and I started to see what the class size were, I was fascinated by it, right? Like I grew up in New York City. I mean, classes were almost 30 kids, right, at times. And so to see classes of 19, 18, 20 was fascinating to me, and I understand the value from a teaching perspective, but I think letting the general kind of populace understand and see like what that is comparably will be helpful. So and that was my last note.
Thank you. Moving on, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you for this update. I want to go back just to back to the voluntary departure conversation you just were having. I've heard people say, sort of speaking badly about how they're celebrating these voluntarily departures. I want to say that many of these people are retiring, so we're going to celebrate them because we're grateful that they're going to. And it does make it easier for us that if they leave, we don't have to fire somebody. But I also want to say that you talked about it a little bit, but I want to say it again, that if that person retires and that position, it's not necessarily that position that's going away.
Right.
There's a whole domino effect
Yes.
of people moving into that position, and then somebody moving, and then that wherever you were thinking very thoroughly about that, wherever that domino ends is where we don't need help anymore.
Yes.
And I want to just say that, make that clear, that again, the person who is, or yeah, the person who's voluntarily leaving is, it's not necessarily that job that,
And I will say the additional ones that we've learned about are retirements. And I have to say our staff, I think our staff get the bigger picture, because some people who have thought about retirement, this may or may not have accelerated thinking, but they care about their colleagues, right? And we are in a situation because of our high level of retention that we have very experienced teachers who might be, affected, and we've made some very deep investments in professional development of teachers. So we would like to retain the 5, 6, the teachers that may be impacted, and I think their colleagues understand that. And I appreciate the fact that I think some people are thinking about the fact that, well, if I retire now, I might be able to save a colleague's position. But you are exactly right that just because the person who retires from a position, it's not necessarily that position that we're not going to fill. We're going to look at what students need, but there is we think someone can move into that, and then that's the position that may not, the student numbers require the backfill. So I actually literally spent the 2 hours ahead of the caucus mapping. We're beginning that mapping process at the leadership team level, and have thought through the staging all the way out to April break in terms of what we can share when, and backwards mapping from town meeting, because we want to do this in a thoughtful and careful way. But, and we're, Liz and I talk frequently about making sure that we're adhering to all of the rules and making sure that people understand how it works, because it is complicated. But we are very committed to minimizing the impact on staff as much as we can. And we do appreciate when there are opportunities to, take advantage of voluntary departures, which are not, to be clear, these are decisions that are being made by the individuals. We're not pressuring anyone, but I think staff care about their teams and their colleagues, and people are thinking about, what's in the best interest of the community. So I believe that some people may have been influenced by knowing that, if I decide to go now, I might be able to help.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, thank you for clarification. And then the activities fee. So I like the all access, and that's what I was pushing for before, so that's good. I think before I was looking at it through the lens of engaged kids. And $400 is cheap for engaged kids. I'm now thinking of it more in the perspective of the cautious kid. And the kid that if they, might want to just try the one club, and then they're like, nope, I'm not going to try it because it's $150. I'm wondering if there's like a no fee zone that of like the really like entry, like the smaller. I don't know how to. It was seemed to be well ranked in that in the stipend listing. Where, of course, like the sports and the play, and that would be the bigger, those definitely $150. But some, I'm just thinking of a kid who is in the middle school and just wants to try one thing, and the parents are so excited because they've never wanted to do anything else, and this is the one thing that they're excited about, and then they're like, oh, $150.
So one of the, I'm thinking aloud here. I think I had kids who would fit that category, and I'm like, try it, right? I think we could implement a try it, you don't pay until you stick approach,
Yeah.
right? I think we have that flexibility. Julie and I were talking about, we're not going to be chasing down the kid who tried this club and didn't pay, right? So if a kid tries a bunch of clubs and never sticks, I don't think it's a high priority to collect. But if a kid tries some clubs and then sticks, then at that point, I think we can ask for the investment. So
Yep.
we could try to work on the policy around a shopping period, colleges do this,
Yep.
ad drop or whatever. I don't think we get that formal, but to say that the intention here is once you are taking advantage of an activity that we have to expend additional resources for on a regular basis, you need to pay the fee. But we could formalize a this is to both what Kim was talking about and I think Zena in public comment, right? How do we, our commitment is to try not to disrupt the availability of access. So if that, I think that would help a lot, and we can formalize that. Julie and I will be revising the full budget packet after today's conversation for presentation to you all in the community. So when we work on the narrative, this section, we can include a commitment to that. So I think that could help a lot on that.
Yeah.
You
It
know,
was also a factor in what sort of tipped over the, we shouldn't do this
For
at the
elementary.
elementary level.
Yeah.
we didn't, you know, the
Because
one, yeah.
We sort of, I and the principals reviewed one by one. This one is in the morning. This one is like a 1 week thing with a big event. This one
Yeah.
has 60 kids, but it's really the only after-school club, so you wouldn't want to have one club be like the thing that people had to pay for. So
Yeah.
it just sort of didn't make sense. So I think that was, I felt very good about keeping that fee-free
Yeah.
because of, some of them actually happen during the day,
Yeah.
you know, so.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, on the flip side, as we've noted, you have to pay to do any of the rec activities, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if they have a try to
they
invite.
don't, you have to, yeah, you commit
So-
and if you try, yeah, you're still on the hook for the
But
whole
but being the
session.
public schools, I
Yeah.
think that is very consistent with the Bedford way, and so I think we can formalize that, and that's why we did ditch it for the elementary, because we're like, we want kids to try things, and it's just the amount of energy to sort of explain, oh, you do have to pay for the garden club at Davis or whatever, and it's, you know, it felt like,
It's also,
it's,
kids become less cautious maybe
Yes.
if they try things K through 5 and, you know.
yeah.
Yeah,
So-
the middle school is that
Yeah.
hard, awkward age.
Yeah, and
where-
so I think if
so,
we
but, yeah.
formalize the sort of, you don't have to pay until you're regular attending, right?
Yeah.
And if you're regular attending for the whole year and you never pay, we can, you know.
Yeah, okay, that
Yeah.
sounds better, awesome.
Yeah.
That's all I have for this.
Okay, just stay on this slide. So I agree with Sarah's point, and I think especially like in that middle school, I think, you know, maybe there's that opportunity. A lot of these clubs do start in the fallish time frame in the middle school and carry through. So there might be that introductory period, right? And if it sticks, because I do agree, I think you want kids to explore. I think like for middle school and high school for sports and the musical and the plays, like those are constant for a 2 or 3 month clip. I think that is in a different category, and I think that's warranted. If you're in the theater and you do something with the Concord Theater Department or other place, parents are paying for their kids to participate in this. You're in club sports, your parents are paying. You're in still rec soccer through 8th grade, you're paying. So I think that is fair. I think that's absolutely fair. So thanks on that. There was the other thing I wanted to just echo what Angel was saying. I think we're doing a very good job of managing to our budget expectations of what the town is looking us to do by not degrading the educational experience. I would also caution us not to go to the basement floor, because I don't think we then want to have to come back to the town 3 months into it and being like, hey, this happened. I'm not saying we've had the budget. I'm not saying we give ourselves a huge runway, but I just want to be very careful about that. You know, in figuring that out. I think the range we're in is probably the right range. I'm in agreement of that. And we understand things are moving. People are moving all the time. We have teachers coming in, teachers coming out, changes in bills, changes in all of these different things. And it's managing a lot of things that we're doing the best of our ability. I don't want us to manage to a number to say, hey, town of Bedford, we got there, and then things blow up on us. So, that's it.
That is why, I mean, just if we backed off on the revenue estimate, you know, we could have, what we presented last time, if you combine it with the additional voluntary departures, would have gotten us to 2.9 or 2.8, but after pressure testing the numbers, we still think this number is pretty conservative, but we feel like we've never done this before, so who knows?
Yep.
Maybe people won't pay, so the changes we added in were really around what we were able to capture, you know, we weren't aiming for it.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I did have one more thing. It's going back to the bus thing and the whole thing of, you know, we're not charging for bus transportation.
Right.
But I would like to publicly state that, right, for any parents that have school-age children, you know, if we ask you to say if you're going to opt in or out, it doesn't mean that if your kids are going to someone else's house to play or there's a week and you're driving them, but it really helps us plan. So for parents to be very mindful if we send out that survey or communication of that opt-in, because it helps with the routing, it helps to understand, do we always need, you know, 2 buses in the afternoon, or maybe it's 1 based on other people's things. Understanding that can change, we're not locking people in, but I think that's a very fair ask of us to ask all of the families to really think about what their transportation plan is. It goes into the parking pass thing as well too. So help us be planful so we can, you know, do right by everyone.
We are absolutely moving forward in that direction, and we're looking at integrating that process with our own student information system and the back-to-school forms, so.
Yeah, it's absolutely fair of us to ask that of the families.
Research on
Yeah, 100%, because we're not charging for it, and there are many communities that ask that and charge.
Yes.
We're not counting kids, we're not saying, oh, you said you're gonna take the bus and your parents give you a ride for 2 weeks, so we're not doing that, but we can ask the parents to help us in this and be partners.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, Brad.
Thank you. I have 2 comments and then sort of 2 topic areas of questions. First one, I just want to, you talked about the CapEx presentation on Thursday of the school committee. It's actually the entire CapEx budget, including the school committee, not just ours. That's going to the select board. Yeah. So that's Thursday night, that's right. But the point is, it's coming from the capital expenditure committee, not coming from the school committee alone. The second thing I wanted to say, just thank you, Julie and Cliff, for including in here the little footnotes about, or the additional information about the impact of FTE reductions on the town benefits packages, costs. I'm not sure everybody understands this. I certainly didn't when I first started looking at school budgets. The way things are done in Bedford and in most towns, I think, the cost of the benefits of an employee are borne by the town. In other words, it accrues to the town's budget, not to the school's budget. If I was teaching in my classroom and talking to my students about real cost savings, I would say that is an accounting fiction. If we have 1 less person working for the schools, the money that we save from that is their salary plus their benefits. But that does not show up in the school committee budget. It is, however, a real savings to the taxpayers of Bedford. So the changes that you've shown here actually also save another $279,000 in town benefits, and that's real money. It's just not money that's in our budget. So I appreciate you showing us that. I don't want to, wave too many loud flags about that, because that's the way we budget, and it's fine, and it's always been that issue. But there is something else there that we should keep in mind when we're getting sort of close to the edges of things. So thanks for doing that. Okay, so as long as we have this up, let me start here. I guess I first have a procedural question. When we vote for the budget, what are we saying about school fees? My understanding is we are saying that there's expected revenue of approximately $300,000, and no other detail is part of that vote.
Well, I mean, technically the school committee votes a bottom line budget.
Correct.
Right? But, and I did confirm with council that our current 1-sentence fee policy covers this. The school committee has discretion to charge reasonable fees for student activities.
Okay.
Obviously, I think the packet is a sort of at least a moral commitment in terms of how we're going to implement. So, we would proceed with implementing a fee structure along these lines. I think from a technical legal matter, if we I think we administratively could deviate slightly from this, as long as, we're I don't think this is like regulatory in terms of what we have to do, but I would say that I would not proceed along any sort of substantively different path without consulting.
Great. I think that's a fabulous answer. It's procedurally correct that you had that latitude, and as you said, it's sort of morally something that you should be sort of careful about.
I would be dumb if I just did something different.
But the point, part of the reason I'm saying this is that it still needs some work. This is not perfect.
Yeah.
But that does not mean that we can't move forward with the budgeting impact that is included in here.
Yeah.
So that leads me to a more specific question then. Can you tell me what I didn't didn't really see it was back up to this, I didn't see it in
No,
our
we didn't
packet.
add
So,
that.
what assumptions are we making about the numbers of people signing up for these two categories? And where I'm going with this question is, I actually think the most important part of this conversation is not what's on the slide, but it is the story about the people who are not going to want to or have to or have the ability to pay this. We have a little phrase here that says fee waivers apply,
Yeah.
but I think what really matters is that we are spiritually, emotionally, philosophically, morally, politically committed to giving access to children
Yes.
who want these activities in their lives and making that available in ways that are not threatening to social status or anything
Yeah.
else like that. That's not on the slide.
Yeah.
That's part of the story. We all know it. So how easy or hard is it going to be for people to, sort of opt out without, and so on? So the question is, what assumptions in the number? Right.
So between December 16th and now, we've worked very carefully with the program directors of the lion's share of these activities for performing arts and athletics to fine-tune the numbers. How many one-season athletes do we have? How many two-season athletes do we have? How many three-season athletes do we have? How many of those athletes are also performing arts? How many of those athletes are in the fall musical and the spring musical, but not sports, right? We still don't have precise numbers. We have multiple year trends on athletics, which is, again, the lion's share. And we got information this morning about the overlap is far less than we thought it was.
Fine and performing and
Between performing arts and athletics, so you have your, some people who like sports, some people who don't do sports. So we are pretty confident that this is a pretty conservative number, informed by real numbers. So what we presented in the original budget proposal was an estimate in terms of participation. We have now lined that up with actual data from this year and the past year, and so. It remains to be seen, and this is why Julie has emphasized multiple times in this discussion about needing to be conservative. Though we have committed to not having any student not participate because of the cost, it could potentially impact. But I would say that we have a very good track record with what we already charge fees for. So, I've said this before, we are not truly fee-free. We charge substantive fees to participate in some of our very large field trips, and we still achieve very high participation, and we do a very good job of getting people support when they need it, even if they don't qualify technically through the state certification match. So that's something we're going to want to monitor. That's probably something we're going to want to assess in terms of whether there's any evidence that someone is not participating in activities because of the cost. And so that's why we want to err on the side of caution in terms of this.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I think that's the dicier part of this, right? There are going to be some obvious candidates for complete fee waivers because of economic status or whatever, and there's going to be a lot of Bedford that are going to say, I can pay the fee, no problem at all. The ones that I'm most concerned about are the ones where somebody might make a choice, even a kid that thinks, I don't want to have to ask mom for that extra money,
Right.
That kind of thing. That we got to find every way we possibly can to avoid that. I know you already know that, and I just wanted to say it.
I would just say the data that we have on the 8th grade trip to DC and the 6th grade in English classroom, those cost more than this, far more, right? And we have a very good track record in terms of participation and meeting needs.
And every time the school committee votes for one of those things, we say there's going to be
Yes.
scholarships, right? Somebody's going to ask that question every time we make that
And
vote.
that's become
So
a
I'm
standard
doing that now for this.
Angel, something that we won't approve the trip until there's a plan for that. Bedford has a very good track record of that, and I anticipate that will continue.
Great. Could you advance to slide 11, 2 slides forward? Julie, I think this question is for you. That 2.4 million overall, what's the baseline? What is that compared to? Is that compared to the maintenance of effort budget? Is that, that's a 2.4 million reduction from what?
From the maintenance effort.
From the maintenance effort, okay.
the maintenance
Great.
effort.
Yeah, okay. I just want to know what it was comparing to, as opposed to a previous budget that we looked at.
No.
None of that. It's
Remember, we
that's right.
baselined it
Yes,
at
I do.
7.7.
I just want to make sure that it's clear about that. A comment about these FTE reductions. I have to say that when we entered the budget process, I was really worried that we were going to have to make staff reductions that were going to result in pretty significant programmatic impacts if we were going to come anywhere near the budgetary guidelines that we were looking for. So although it seems a little bit reductionist in order to, that's not the right word, but that we're reducing a fair amount here, I'm actually kind of pleased to hear that what you're saying is that there won't be these kinds of programmatic impacts. The statement that you're using, everybody should hear it, is that everything that was available will still be available. That is not to say there won't be pain points in this. I'm also hearing you say that some teachers may not be able to teach the class that they wanted to teach because we're moving some things around, that some class sizes might be a little bit bigger than they otherwise would have been, that some students won't get the exact elective that they hope for. There are already pain points in here, and it is at least an attempt to strike a balance between that tolerable pain, if you will, and the need for some fiscal austerity here. And so I think that's been pretty well done, so thank you very much.
You're welcome. One rule of thumb that people might be able to, very broad strokes, is that we have about 500 staff members. Our declining enrollment this year was 4.4%, followed by another 1.5% for next year. So you take 4%, just as a rough number, of 500, and that's 20. We have 17.7. So it should be, right, we should be able to contract operations thoughtfully and not impact student programming dramatically if we have, 170 less students to serve. And that's what we are trying to do. It is not easy. You can't contract proportionally exactly, but rough numbers, I hope that helps people understand that this looks like it is a big number. It is actual people impacted, but it is commensurate with our responsibility to contract our footprint so that we are still able to sustain this going forward.
Okay, thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you, Cliff and Julie, for all of this. I appreciate it. I have a few questions and comments, and they're a little bit all over the place with this. So starting at the secondary student activity fees, which is on page 9. Just an observation. I know you were talking about families pay for rec fees. Something that we haven't really talked about is for some families, they'll be accustomed to fees. For other families, that will mean 2 fees. And, there are rec fees and still rec programming available at the middle school and higher that families might both participate in and be charged a rec fee. For example, if your student plays a fall sport and then in the winter takes part in strength and conditioning program. Like there are rec programs that are run, which actually mean a all access fee of $400 could be in addition to the rec fee. So I just don't want to minimize the impact to families that others have touched upon, that it's not just this $400, it could be the $400 plus other fees that are being charged on top of that. For the same families that Brad and everyone else is concerned about, the families that will likely need to pay, but for whom it might be an additional burden. So just to observe that this could actually be on top of others. What is the family cap?
It's we're setting it at, you pay for no more than 2 students, so $800.
Okay. As far as, I think it was Zena who commented about the fee waivers, is there an affirmative opt-in? Like if your family already qualifies for free lunch and that there's a fee and your student signs up, are they then sent something and you have to say, I have a waiver, or do you just not even get that initial request?
We're planning to automatically exempt. I think Zena made a good point about making sure people know that that's the case, so they don't not participate. And again, we'll be working on that administrative process, throughout the spring and into the summer. But our plan is that if you qualify and match in our system for free and reduced price lunch, that you would automatically be waived. You wouldn't have to apply or anything, and I do think we need to figure out a way to let them know that.
Okay. Yeah, I think we have to be abundantly clear on that.
Yeah, I actually don't know right now if, because we are universal free lunch for everyone, whether families even know if they're, qualified. But the qualification is due to state benefited programs. So I would think most
Right.
families would know if, like, we can communicate, if you receive any benefits from the state, you automatically qualify for the fee waiver. But we'll try to be proactive in terms of informing
Just so that there's
families.
no
Yeah.
affirmative burden on families
Yeah.
that are made well aware that they can participate, it doesn't cost anything, and that they don't have to go seeking some kind of a reimbursement or any other type of programming.
Yeah.
There is a few mentions in here about just overall at the budget that class sizes are pushing up on the guidelines. Am I correct in understanding that they're not, with very little exception, going over the guidelines?
Yes, so in our discussion, we've never got to a tier 3 of reductions. The way I framed it is that tier 2 does start to put upward pressure on the guidelines, which means we may be towards the upper end of the range. But our commitment currently is that with very few exceptions, we will still be within our guidelines. We've just been well below our guidelines in many instances. So again, I want to recognize that that does represent a change in practice, right? But it does not represent a change in our guidelines. If we had to push further lower, we'd have to have a discussion with the leadership team about where we would change our guidelines, right? But right now, the numbers show that we will still, in most cases, be very comfortably within guideline, and perhaps still on the lower end in many places, but in certain subjects that might have enjoyed more space, there might be less space, right?
Okay, thank you. And then one comment, and I apologize, going back to this fee, which I think Sarah had brought up, could maybe some of the administrative burden be eased by just the timing of the collection? Like, rather than to allow for that kind of trial window, don't collect it in the start, wait until you're a month in to, the fall season or the fall club programming.
I think what we've talked about is that as part of the back to school, if you know your kid is going to be, in the, like that, please pay it now, and then we'll cross you off the list. And then I think the collection might be, maybe towards the end of the first semester or something, or first season or something. So that's something we're going to have to figure out and work on over the spring and the summer. But yes, I think with this discussion tonight, we might intentionally want to collect on the back end, right?
Right, yeah, just to lower any
Not too
administrative
far on
burden.
that, yeah.
Right, yeah, no, I'm not looking to make it more work, but more less,
Yeah, I'm
to make
thinking,
it less
I mean,
work.
thinking out loud again, I would say, I think probably 50% or more families will just pay the all access stuff sort of up front, and then probably collect between the fall and the winter season, and then maybe one more time between that's just thinking out loud, but Julie's team will have to think through the logistics of that.
Okay, and then I guess last question on this is, and this goes to Brad's point, we're approving a budget at some point. This is part of the budget, it's
Yes.
inherent. Will the school committee have any other opportunity to talk about this or see the final plan before it's actually implemented?
If you would like, I'd be happy to bring it back. And timing-wise, it probably would make the most sense for us to think about that as, I would say, town meeting is March 23rd. We could add it, looking at Julie, to the finance-focused meeting for Q3, which would happen in mid-April. Would we have a sort of draft of the process, or is that a little too tight?
We can figure that out.
Yeah, maybe mid-April or May,
Okay,
right?
yeah, no, there's no, just so we know what's going to be, we know what we're approving, like, we're approving the budget, but
Yeah.
I would like to know what it is we're actually implementing.
I mean,
so we
barring
plan.
any unforeseen issues, I would say we would be, creating guidelines and a process that align exactly with this.
Sure.
But I make a public commitment to you all and the public that if for some reason it deviates in any significant way from this, that we would most certainly bring it to you, perhaps even ask your approval, just to be safe. But we can certainly, before the end of the school year, bring back sort of more operationally what we think it's going to look like.
Okay, and then a procedural question. I know we talked about taking sort of a poll tonight. What are you, Cliff, hoping for us to do so that you could take next steps?
Well, so because we are committed to transparency with the public with more information, and I'm going to be producing some informational videos with some new tools that we've been learning about, I would like to know if this is this is what you anticipate seeing with the full detail. So what Julie will do is go back in to the accounting structure and make sure the tweaks are there, and we'll update the narrative as appropriate so that there's a final document that would go to the finance committee. So we're we would want to know that if 3.1, this number as presented is in the range, basically lock that down tonight so we can work to make sure that all the backup is updated. I did hear a little wiggle to go back up, but I guess it'd be helpful to know if the sense of the committee is that this 3.1% budget, this top line here, is within the range of comfort for what you want to anticipate approving on the 27th, barring obviously additional information and feedback from the public hearing that will be conducted at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay. That in mind, I suppose we'll go around one more time if folks want to weigh in, ask any last minute questions, or talk about where they are landing currently. So Kim, we'll start with you.
No further questions.
Angel?
I mean, I think I made my
Yeah.
feelings pretty strong before, so I stick to that.
I agree with Angel that if there's like I mean, it would probably be, one FTE would that make up that?
It's closer to 2, probably 1.5,
2.
depending on which one it is.
That would do what?
Yeah.
That would do what?
That would bring
I
us back
understand.
up to 335.
Oh.
The difference is about, I forget, absolutely, it's like 175.
Yeah, close to 200.
Yeah, I mean, if it's 1 or 2 less people that we have to let go, and again, they're real people and real jobs that really impact. I know that I've trusted you've done a really good job of lessening the impact, but there is still impact. So I'm okay with that little bit of wiggle room. I don't want to go any further than that, but I want to be.
When you say further down or up or both, that your range is between 3.1 and 3.35?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I also want to be respectful and listen to the FinCom and understand the town's pressure that we're getting as well. So it's a tricky line to walk, but yeah.
Can I just ask I just want to ask a clarifying question. Sorry to jump in. We went from the approximately 335 to the approximately 3.1 based on additional tier 1 reductions, correct? Not additional tier 2 reductions?
Well, there was a little bit of
as you've
movement from tier
characterized
2 to tier 1, but we were also able to identify something that wasn't in either tier to add to tier 1 because of the voluntary departure. I want to be clear that it isn't just like you can just swap everything because
Right.
it has to be
Right.
lined up.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is that there are probably, I know for a fact there's another reduction that we could take and be well within guidelines. But that one I have left outside of tier 2 because it would, even though it doesn't, it honors or is consistent with what I was saying in terms of the kids won't, there won't be anything a kid won't get this year and the next year, but maybe they'll have, slightly higher class sizes or caseload. It causes a structural imbalance in that particular department or school that I feel is too destabilizing. But the others that we've included, we've assessed that it works, right, or it can work. And there's a little bit of, if you're looking at a structure, you also need to be equitable about how you approach that structure. So right now, if I thought like, which position would I?
It's like such a
like one thing we could do, right, if you like, is we could add another math intervention position, right, in terms of our actual need at the elementary level. But, we're still above what the FinCom wants, so it feels like.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah, your puzzle that you've done is all fit together right
Yeah,
now, and
it's-
if you pull one out to put everything else, like.
Well, it also just becomes like, which one do you put, like, because we've been, as we said, we didn't target a particular number. We looked at what can we do to stay within guidelines, preserve student program, and minimize impact on staff destabilization. And we found everything we could find, right, consistent with the declining enrollment trend. So again, I mean, there's definitely, I'll go back to the team to say if we could save a position that is particularly destabilizing, like, let's take a look. But you're gonna have very different opinions.
Yeah.
on that, depending on,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, can I just be recommend that, I guess my broader point though is the second thing you just mentioned about how you could get low, like, I don't even want to hear it at this point, or like, I don't need to hear lower than the 3.1.
Yeah.
Right, no, I'm not,
Actually,
and I'm not trying to.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, don't even mention it. I don't even want to hear about that right now because I think we have all settled on and are comfortable with at its worst. We're here. Like, I don't need you to reduce somebody else. Like at this point, right? And if someone retires, then I think it's figure out where that fits within the structure
Yes.
of maintaining what you have and reconsidering, right? Who may have been let go and
Yes.
whatever, right? Like, I think you've done the job that I think we've tasked you with, which is to bring us as close as possible to this surprisingly low number that we were not prepared for at the onset. I think you've done an incredible Herculean job to get here, right? And so you've done it. Great. Now just let's make it work.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
Sheila?
Yeah, I agree with Angel. I think in that 3.1 to the 3.35 range is where we should play. And I'll just echo something Angel said. I would not, like, between now and next week, if you find out X person is retiring, that's not an invitation to go re-swizzle everything, because we're going to have that ebb and flow through everything. And you never know what's coming. You never know what needs are going to be needed across the 4 schools or anything like that. So we were operating on the premise of 3.5 this year after last year. We were asked to go down. We're coming down. We're not going up, and we're in a good range. So now we just need to figure out how to do it. I think we're sort of done with the calculations.
I can support this. Cliff, I think I heard you say you didn't start by targeting a number. What you did, to paraphrase this a little bit, you put together a programmatically coherent approach, and you figured out what it's going to cost, and that cost is within the realm of what is feasible, and that's why I support it. It's not about finding a number. It's about teaching our kids.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything said. I know there have been limited calls to sort of go through the exercise of showing what a lower budget would look like. Those calls are not from the 5 of us. That I don't think it's sound leadership to put you and Julie through doing something that isn't something that we're going to support. So on that note, for the reasons already stated, I think this is, you've done what we've asked you to do, and I feel comfortable supporting this budget as presented tonight.
Okay. We will take out no, we're not gonna be sharpening the pencil now, we're just gonna be,
Cleaning, yeah.
cleaning up
Cleaning up.
the backup.
Yep.
And honestly, as we do that cleanup, there could be something that's high, like shifts upward, because we actually did find something earlier today, and we're like, the sort of like assumption of how the jigsaw would move, we're like, so that actually gives us a little bit of wiggle to maybe it ends up being, it could be, the commitment will be, what I bring back will be no higher than 3.35 and no lower than 3.1, somewhere in between, possibly 3.17, 3.21, based on exactly, because we're in that final stage of the exercise of looking at all of the shifts and making sure that it works for kids.
Awesome.
All right, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the superintendent report. Superintendent Schwung.
You know what? I don't have anything to
No
report
report.
because I forgot to, like, I've been a little bit focused on this and other things, so we're off to a good start after the new year. Pick up the winter season for sports. Yeah, I don't have anything.
Okay, go around. Anything to add, Kim?
Oh, actually, no, I do.
Wait,
I'm
hold
sorry, I
on.
do.
Sorry, Kim. Too soon, hold on.
I did want to let you know that the Healthy School Hours Working Group is meeting Thursday, and we have an outreach plan that we're about to launch, which includes getting feedback from the community and stakeholders between options A and option B. So it'll be a very short survey, accompanied by an explainer video, and we'll be making time for students to take it, giving it to staff, and then pushing it out to community. So I anticipate being able to bring back sort of a leaning on A or B for your consideration, potentially on February 10th, but maybe on the meeting after February break. The Anti-Hate Bias Task Force is meeting next Tuesday at this time. I committed to quarterly updates on both of those groups, but those updates will likely be February 10th or whatever the meeting after February break is. So I just want to let you know that those two things are underway. But Healthy School Hours will be pushing out actually in the same time frame as the budget information. So there'll likely be two videos floating out there, one on the budget, one on Healthy School Hours. So that was the one thing I wanted to make sure everyone knew where. Sorry, Kim.
All right, back to you, Kim.
No, that's okay. Thank you. Those are great updates. And again, let me know how I can support in the survey distribution, especially among military families. And that's all for me.
We have a plan to push out differentially through the new software that we have, text-based, for Boston and Hanscom when the survey goes out. Brian DeCellis and Akela are going to help push that out extra so that we get that feedback. And your help will be welcome as well. Oops, sorry. Okay.
Thanks, Kim. Angel.
Thank you.
Because I wasn't at the last meeting, I didn't get the opportunity to just publicly say, and I know he's since retired, but I had a really good relationship with Chief Fisher, and I'm just super grateful for everything he did for our families, for the town, for the kids, for the schools, and just, you know, he'll be missed by me. I was there when he got selected, and I just, you know, looking forward to seeing what's next from the town and the police department, and what role we play kind of figuring out what that next person looks like as well.
Thank you. Sarah?
If you're interested in running for school committee, pull papers.
Okay. Sheila?
Sure. So I wanted to give a shout out. I had the opportunity this week to take some questions from Troop 194 from some scouts working on their citizenship in the community badge. And it's an optional badge for all scouts, but it is required if you're going to go for the Eagle Scout. And part of their requirement was to talk to an elected official and sort of understand a little bit more about the role, but also to provide feedback on something that it was interest to them. So the scouts I spoke to were very interested in providing some feedback on the healthy school start times. And it was a great conversation. They came very well prepared. They asked some great questions and wanted to pass along to our task force. One of the high school students was just very curious to understand that if we push out the BHS start time, which then all the activities roll to a little sort of later start time than finish time, was curious if there were going to be recommendations to parents at what time the kids really ideally should be in bed, right? Because then their homework is getting pushed out.
Yeah.
And some of the students I was talking to were saying they don't, the way activities live right now and the homework that they're taking, they're going to bed between 11 and midnight. So they're wondering, like, do I now go to bed between 12 and 1? That was a thoughtful question. One of the Lane students had asked about what would happen to early gym hours if you're flipping the schedule. Their perspective was like, oh, maybe that's going away. And then they shared from their perspective that going to the Lane gym hours was really great to get all their energy out. And that their teacher appreciates that a lot in this particular student's class, that I guess a lot of those classmates go there. And the teacher has also said, this is fantastic because you've got the wiggles out before you get. But just wanted to share that feedback. It was a great and thoughtful conversation with some of these scouts. And I loved that they were getting involved in understanding how our town works and providing some feedback on things that could be relevant to them in terms of school start times. So that's all.
Great. Okay, thank you. Brad?
No questions.
All right, I have nothing to add either, then that was our last agenda item. If there's no further business under the open session agenda, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Brad moved, Angel seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, ayes have it. This meeting is adjourned at 9:39 PM.
Good night, Bedford.
Good night.